Hello, everyone. I'm Sweta Patel, as you know, and I'm here with Dr. Robert today. And Dr. Robert is an incredible doctor, naturopathic doctor, and chiropractic doctor. And the reason why I wanted to bring him on and interview him was because he has worked with over 25,000 patients in 43 states and 23 countries.
Yeah, actually more now, but yeah,
Wow. So
yeah.
you've probably encountered almost everything related to hormones.
I always get surprised. I won't say I've encountered everything, but over the actually yesterday was my 23rd year in practice anniversary, Sweta.
Wow.
Yeah, so over those
Happy
20, thank you.
happy anniversary.
Thank you. So over those 23 years, there's definitely been a lot of hormonal and other type of health issues I've come across for sure.
That's amazing. And today we're going to talk about how leaky gut and molecular mimicry and autoimmune conditions are all related. Then we'll go into maybe the thyroid and some key takeaways and anything that Dr. Robert would like to give away on this interview.
Awesome. Love it. Love it.
So why don't we get started? What is molecular mimicry? And I'm sure a lot of these women know what leaky gut is, but they may not be clear about it. So maybe we can start off with that.
Sure. Well, molecular mimicry is really it's a real pretty simple concept. It's when the immune system gets confused between your own natural cells and the cells of certain bacteria. Like, for example, Sweta, there's a bacteria called Yersinia bacteria, and all along the surface of it, right, you have like a cell, kind of like an egg. So you have this cell, and all along the surface on it, it has these proteins. It has this kind of protein structure. And that protein structure is very similar to the protein structure on the thyroid cell. So, yeah, so what can happen is the immune system goes, all right, we have this Yersinia bacteria, we need to kill it. And the immune system then flags that protein structure, that sequence of proteins on the cell surface of the Yersinia bacteria, and it goes, that's bad. Anytime you encounter that, you have to attack it. Well, the immune system will eradicate the Yersinia bacteria, but the problem is, the immune system's a virulent system, and it's also very vigilant. So it's like looking around, and all of a sudden it comes across the thyroid, and it goes, wait a second, haven't we seen this before? This looks a lot like the protein structure on the surface of that Yersinia bacteria. Let's start attacking that. And now we get this concept of molecular mimicry. It's called mimicry because it's mimicking the thyroid protein structure on the outside of the cell is mimicking the protein structure on this bacteria. So, and then the immune system starts to attack it. So essentially that's what it is. And there are a handful of different microorganisms that are connected to that, and there's ways to test for that as well.
Wow. On a cellular level.
Yeah, so not so much on a cellular level. What we know is we know that there are certain bacteria, for example, like Yersinia and some other ones, that are autoimmune triggers. We know that they have the potential to trigger autoimmune reactions. So we can look for those bacteria through blood work. We can look through those bacteria through stool studies. There's actually different stool studies that I really like for that in particular. But yeah, so there's different ways you could check for the bacteria. And if you know the bacteria is there, and you know that person is experiencing an autoimmune reaction like Hashimoto's, for example, you then kind of put two and two together and you go, okay, all right, so let's see what we can do. Let's see, the Yersinia is here. Let's help the immune system overcome that. And then once that's been handled, all right, now let's reset the immune response so the immune system is not thinking the thyroid cells are the Yersinia bacteria. So that's kind of the approach you take with something like that.
I see. And in terms of the bacteria, like when I did like a GI map test, I remember one of the things I tested for was Klebsiella, and that was through the roof for me. So I had to get rid of that somehow. And I think like for me, like even when you get rid of these bacterias and viruses, the change isn't instant. Like you don't feel better right away after you get rid of it. Am I wrong or?
It's not like strep throat, you know, it's not like you take the antibiotic and you're like, oh, my throat feels great now, I'm done.
Uh-huh.
It's not that type of thing, right? It's not just the presence of the bacteria, but
Uh-huh.
it's what the bacteria has done to the physiology of the body for
Uh-huh.
the time it's been in there. So if that bacteria has been there for 6 years, 6 months, whatever it is, there's a lot of change and adaptation the immune system and body has gone through, and all of that essentially needs to be reversed. So it takes a minute, as we say here in the South.
Yeah, and I mean, like, there's a lot of talk out there about when I started getting to know about like these viruses and bacteria. The first book I had ever read was like Thyroid Healing by
Yeah.
Anthony Williams, which is,
Mhm.
I would say, a pretty basic book. I mean, it only covers EBV,
Yeah.
but it doesn't cover all these other bacterias and pathogens and viruses that you may have. And for me, I had EBV, but it didn't show up in the stool sample. It showed up in my blood test.
Sure.
So, yeah. Oh, go ahead.
No, no, yeah, like I was just going to comment on EBV. So it's just so common to have, like I have EBV. Everybody, no, I don't know about everybody, but I forget what the percentage is. It's like 80 or 90% of the population has Epstein-Barr virus, right? So it's just, is it active? Is it inactive? And you could tell through blood work if it is or isn't.
Uh-huh.
But I've not found EBV to be like, so it's definitely a factor in a lot of different autoimmune cases, but
Uh-huh.
it's not, I think, as huge a factor as some people think it is. So my
Yeah.
2 cents on EBV.
It's interesting because there's a lot of hype around it. And a lot of these women who have Hashimoto's think that they're getting all these sort of, what do you call it, like symptoms because of the EBV. And I mean, it could be that, but I don't think that it was that for me.
Yeah, it's usually, here's what I've seen. The immune system is a busy system. There's usually some other immunological challenge present in the person's body. And as a result, the immune system is in a slightly weakened state, and then the EBV can rise, and that EBV can then start to cause issues. But the EBV is not usually the main thing causing issues. It's something else. It's a bacteria, virus, parasite, yeast, fungi, something in the body that's caused the immune system to overexpress itself. So yeah, I agree, and I don't know that I've worked with so many thyroid cases. I mean, I'm sure like EBV has played a part, but I don't know that it's been a huge part in a lot of cases for sure.
So it's not like the first thing you look at when you work with somebody.
No. Mm-mm. No, that'll be like EBV we'll look at way later on down the road,
Uh-huh.
because usually the stuff that you find early on is a much higher priority. So when you handle and address those things and then give the body what it needs, usually the body heals itself and things come around. Like I had one patient, she was when did she come to me? I don't know, but she had thyroid problems. She started taking thyroid medication when she was 16.
Wow.
She came to me in I think it was her 70s.
Oh my
And she's,
God.
yeah, right. So she's been on it for a while.
Yeah.
And yeah, and we did a blood work. We did all the stuff that we need, all the lab testing that we needed. We found certain things on her. And EBV was not a major problem for her, but there were some gut issues that needed to be corrected. She did have leaky gut. She did have some other gut bacteria that was present. I think she had a parasite as well. She had some food sensitivities. We had to do some detoxification work with her. So after we cleared all that stuff up, got her on the right nutrients, right diet, her thyroid medication slowly decreased over the course of a year, and now it's been a few years now. It's been about a year and a half, and I think she's in her 80s now, and no thyroid medication, and she lost like 45 pounds, and feels great and all that stuff.
That's
But
incredible.
yeah, it's pretty wild, right? Because when you think of it, it's like wow, how long has this been going on in her body to
Uh-huh.
create this condition? And now she is in her late 70s, early 80s, and her body's doing well and doesn't need the medication anymore. Crazy.
That's incredible. Sounds like my story because, you know, they put me on armor and all my symptoms had like amplified, and I just stopped it because I was like, my body intuitively, I knew my body didn't like it. And then a month later, they put me on LDN and levothyroxine or
Hmm.
tyrosine. And same thing happened. Actually, my antibodies were increasing a lot. And they're like, oh, they're supposed to be increasing a lot. And I'm like, no, they're not. You know, like what, I mean, what makes you think that? And, you know, and it wasn't until you would not believe this. I came to Vegas and some lady on the street she was like a healer, and she actually told me to go visit this naturopathic doctor in Vegas. So I did, and the naturopathic doctor, basically, she was super old school and had this
Yeah.
needle thing, and she poked it between my fingers,
Oh
and
yeah, electrodermal screening she did.
yeah, and
Hmm.
she said, you know, I don't know why you're trying to fix your thyroid. Your thyroid is not the issue, it's your adrenals. And
Wow.
she gave me this supplement. It had like raw adrenal concentrate, and basically I took that 2 times a day. But I felt like I had my life back in less than a week,
Yeah.
and my thyroid numbers had gone from a 6.4 to a 2.4 for the
Whoa,
yeah, in 2 weeks.
that's awesome.
It was crazy. And you know, there's been like after that I started studying the adrenals and autoimmune conditions because
Sure.
this was my fourth condition. Hashimoto's was. So
Wow.
yeah, I thought there was some connection between your adrenals and not even Hashimoto's, but autoimmunity in general.
Oh, yeah, there is. There's, even just like, so if we just talked about for a second, just primary hypothyroidism, right? So there's no autoimmune activity present. The TPO levels are fine, thyroglobulins fine, but there's clearly hypothyroidism. Sometimes that's present because of an adrenal issue. Like when the adrenals, in some cases, the adrenals will overproduce cortisol, and cortisol interferes with the conversion of T4 to T3,
Uh-huh.
as well as it interferes with the production of T4. So, if a person has primary hypothyroidism and they don't ever look at their adrenal glands, they're missing a potential part of the picture, because if their cortisol is elevated, they're not going to make adequate amounts of T4. They're not going to convert that T4, whatever they're making, to T3. They're going to be in a hypothyroid state. Their TSH is going to go up. But really what we're dealing with in that case is an adrenal problem causing a thyroid problem, not necessarily a primary thyroid problem. So yeah, there's all crazy, there's the one thing I realize, I say this to my wife all the time. I'm like, Pam, this is what I've learned over 23 years. Anything in the body can cause anything in the body. I swear, we've seen the craziest stuff. We had a guy come to us. This is totally irrelevant to this
Huh.
conversation, but it's just to prove the point that anything can cause anything. We had this guy that was in the Vietnam War, and he came to us with jungle rot on his foot. He's had it since Vietnam. It's like this crazy fungus and all this stuff.
Oh my
And he
God.
saw one of the doctors that was working in my clinic at the time, and the doc's like, man, I don't know why he's got this. He's like, but it's really weird. He's got this vertebra out of place in his lower back. He's like, I'm going to try adjusting it. I'm like, yeah, go for it. So he adjusted. I'm not kidding. The guy, after a couple of weeks, the guy's jungle rot clears up on his foot. I'm like, this is insane. I'm like, there's no way this can happen, but it did. So I'm always very, very open-minded when I approach every patient case. I never think in like a dogmatic viewpoint or like in like a black and white. It's always, hey, anything can cause anything. Let's understand everything possible with this person's body so we can identify the true cause to why they're not able to get well and overcome their condition. So
Right.
yeah.
And like a lot of the women in this group feel like they have adrenal fatigue, and they're hesitant about using like an adrenal concentrate or like a supplement for their adrenals because they think that a lot of naturopathic doctors say that it's like basically putting cortisol in your body, and then your body, it'll lead to adrenal insufficiency. So
Yeah. So, oh, sorry, go ahead.
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to comment. So, yeah, so there is truth to that, right? So here's the issue with the adrenal glands. You can have primary adrenal problems. Definitely they occur and you address those things. However, the adrenal glands are responsive glands, meaning they're usually responding to a stressor in the body. So for example, if someone does have, let's say, a fungal infection or a yeast overgrowth, right? That infection is going to produce inflammation in the body. So the adrenal glands go, hey, there's inflammation here. Let's kick out the most powerful anti-inflammatory hormone that the body makes, which is cortisol. So now the adrenals start overproducing cortisol to deal with the inflammation that was created by this infection. So over time, if that infection is not identified and dealt with, the adrenals are still pumping out cortisol, but they're supposed to pump out all these other hormones too, like DHEA and pregnenolone, right? And estrogen and testosterone. And what they do is they start to go, man, we're getting tired. We can't keep up the demand. So they'll continue pumping out cortisol, but they'll stop producing the other hormones or they'll slow their production. Eventually, as you get further into adrenal fatigue, now the cortisol starts to fall and you see all the hormones kind of flatlining. So in those cases, it's not a true adrenal fatigue. Like, yes, the adrenals need to be dealt with and supported correctly, different for each case. But the true cause of that adrenal insufficiency or that adrenal fatigue is the infection that is producing inflammation that has overwhelmed the adrenals over time. So it's kind of different for each person, and you have to really assess that on a case-by-case basis for sure. But yeah, their concern is not invalid. It's valid, because if you start to take too much raw adrenal glandular when you don't need it, it really becomes kind of like rent-a-gland. You know, you're taking, you're like, yeah, here, we'll take this cow gland and you could have it because your gland doesn't work well. Doesn't actually correct the problem. Although in some cases it will, and those are different. That's when there's primary adrenal fatigue, completely different.
So you address the hormones. First, you address like the bacteria, the viruses, infections, and then you sort of balance the hormones. Is that your approach, or?
So it's really a case-by-case basis, right? Because it depends where the fire is. Like, some people come to me and they're like, Doc, look, I haven't slept in like a year. You know, I sleep like 2 or 3 hours a night. I can't function well. I'm dying. Those people, you can't really start to go after bacteria and detox, although that might be the underlying cause. Those people, you got to settle their system down first. You know, you just got to calm their system down. You got to get them sleeping better. They start sleeping better, their energy starts improving. Now their body has more energy to deal with and cope with some of those like true causes. So it's really case by case. I can tell you, in the last 23 years, aside from 2 twins, we've never had 2 people on the same exact holistic healing program. It's just never happened.
And so, that's the sign of a good doctor.
Oh. Thanks.
I mean, I built this organization of women because after what I've gone through with like 4 autoimmune conditions, I basically wanted to help them in a way where big pharma isn't, you know, going to get in the way. And multiple doctors had told me I was going to die and I was at high risk if I stopped taking prescriptions. And
wow.
I also, you know, the second condition I had was autoimmune hemolytic anemia, where I had to get blood transfusions just to stay alive because my hemoglobin was down to a 4.5.
Oh my God.
And yeah, it was, and I was on high doses of prednisone, but you know, after like 3 years, I realized that that blood that was put in my body actually had a lot of infections, viruses, and bacteria that they never checked for.
Right.
So
right. One of the big problems with transfusions is, you know, they'll clear it of some things, like you're not going to get MRSA from a transfusion, but who knows what else you're going to pick up, and who knows what other toxins are going to be sitting in that person's blood.
Exactly, and that's never checked, you know, on that level. So yeah, and I guess the rest of my life I've just kind of been working on cleaning up all the garbage.
Yeah. I have to say, you're amazing. You're really incredible to have had 4 autoimmune diseases improve the health of your body, and then create a platform like this for other women that are in similar situations where they can go and learn and help themselves. It's really, that's incredible what you're doing. It really
Because
is.
one of the biggest problems I saw was that, you know, every doctor has a different opinion, and
Yeah.
you have to pay like an initiation fee to go check them out, even after you read their reviews and everything. But you really can't judge a doctor by the reviews you read because, like you said, everyone is so customized, you know?
Sure.
And I feel like it's important for everybody to understand their bodies in order to heal themselves. And by having these interviews with doctors, they can assess things themselves and get their second opinion, and, you know, and work with the doctor if
Yeah.
they feel that sort of connection.
Yeah, I think, I think that's brilliant. And I think it's so needed because especially in today's medical, surroundings, you really need to you need to keep your own counsel. You need to be your own advocate. You really kind of need to doctor yourself to a degree because there's stories I've heard from patients. And like there was this patient I talked to not too long ago, and she told me her daughter was having these problems, and she told me some supplements that the naturopath put her on, and I was like, she can't take those, it's going to make her really, really ill. And she's like, oh, and I had to explain to her what was happening. She's like, oh my god, once she had the data, she realized, okay, she doesn't need to do that. So I think it's just really great that I love when I talk to an educated patient, put it that way. I do, because I don't want to just, my goal in life is not to bark orders at a patient, right? And be like, take this, take this, take this. My job is to educate and bring understanding so that way we can create resolution. And I love when a patient comes to me, they're like, doc, look, so I was tested, I got MTHFR, I got COMT, I got this, I got that, I got blah, 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 and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. It's like, oh, great. I got a person who's really invested in their health, that understands their body. Let's get rolling. Let's do what we need to do to get this person help. So I love that you have this platform.
Yeah, and I, after like trying everything under the sun and like going to these doctors, I had to not only wait 3 or 4 months to get in the door with them,
Easy.
but like, like
Crazy.
they're impossible to work with because even after I leave their office, I'm like, okay, so how did this help me?
Right. And now what do I do? Okay, thank you. I'll tell you, one of the things that I realized early on in practice is communication is essential. The only way you're going to solve a patient's problem or help them solve their own problem is through great communication. Problems exist in life often because lack of communication, right? When you start to communicate, I get a problem with a friend, and then you communicate about it, you talk about it, you resolve it. It's the same thing when you're trying to solve problems with the human body. So one of the things we did early on was we always did our best to have very open communication and ease of communication with our patients. So we have our patient portal, we have email access, we have case managers that help the patients and are available through text. It's like we have all these communication lines that come from our clinic into our patients' lives. So that way, if they need us, we're there. If they need clarification, they just had a doctor's visit and there's something that they're not fully like, I don't really get that. Awesome, good. Send your communication in. Let us answer that, because you can't leave a doctor's office with just a piece of paper or an email and like, okay, now what do I do, right? You need that support. It's so vital.
Exactly. And, with that, like, it's like you have to sort of educate yourself on these topics before you even go, unless you want to leave, like, what just happened.
True.
So, yeah, maybe we can jump into our other topic for the last part of this interview and talk about leaky gut and like how does leaky gut and molecular mimicry sort of go together?
Sure.
Yeah, and how do you where does one get started with all of this stuff?
Well, so you got to get started by getting knowledge. So a person first needs knowledge and understanding, and then they need to find the right provider if they can't solve it on their own. But when we're looking at a topic like leaky gut, what we're really talking about, just like the name says, it's stuff that's in your gut that's leaking into your bloodstream that shouldn't be there, right? And there's causes for that. There's different bacteria, there's parasites, there's yeast, there's certain infections in the gut that could raise what's called your zonulin levels. Are you familiar with that term, Sweden?
Zonulin.
Zonulin. So zonulin is a substance. So you have these little cells. You have these little cells in your intestinal tract, right? And they allow certain things through a gap, like this, right? They allow certain things through a gap. When the zonulin levels go up, the space in between the cells increases, and then you get more stuff, coming through the gap that really shouldn't be there. So there's certain bacteria, there's certain parasites, or certain organisms that can actually elevate that zonulin level, increasing the space between the intestinal cells, the enterocytes, and then toxins and other things leak in. And the reason why this is such a problem in like thyroid cases, for example, is these toxins, some of these toxins have a high affinity for certain tissues. So certain toxins may have a very high affinity for thyroid tissue. So what they do is they get into the bloodstream, they deposit into the thyroid gland, and when the immune system sees them there, the immune system goes, oh, what's that doing there? That shouldn't be there. And the immune system goes, well, let's get rid of it. The problem is your immune system is a very aggressive system. Sweetie, it's like if we had like a fly on the wall, right? We would just get a fly swatter and go boop, and it would be done. Your immune system's like, no, 12-gauge shotgun, poof, right? The issue with that is if you had several flies on the walls in your house and your immune system is blowing all these flies away with shotguns, you're going to have all holes in your home, and your house is eventually going to fall apart. And that's what happens sometimes with leaky gut. Toxins and things, they get in, or organisms, microorganisms that shouldn't be there. They get in, they deposit in the thyroid tissue. Your immune system attacks the organism or the toxin in the tissue. It's my contention that the immune system never attacks itself. It's never really attacking itself. It's attacking something inside itself. Right? So if you have these microorganisms that shouldn't be there, these toxins that shouldn't be there in the thyroid, the immune system starts to attack the thyroid. Not really, it's attacking the toxin in the thyroid, and the thyroid then starts to get damaged simply like through collateral damage. So that's often what happens. And depending upon your immune condition, when we're talking specifically about leaky gut, some of these toxins may have a higher affinity for joint tissue. So we're looking at things like rheumatoid arthritis or psoriatic arthritis. Some are more like the skin, have a higher affinity for the skin. So we're looking at things like psoriasis, right? It just depends upon alopecia in the hair follicles. It just depends where these guys deposit and what the immune system does and how aggressive it is with those microorganisms or toxins. So essentially that's what leaky gut is, right? And it's usually caused by some organism, but there's other things that can cause leaky gut as well besides just microorganisms.
And do you see that like these autoimmune conditions? Because when I had Hashimoto's, I also had alopecia. And I saw like these dime-like bald spots in my hair.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, like this should not be happening. This is not healthy. And with that, it was kind of like, people get hair loss with Hashimoto's, but they don't get like bald spots like that.
Yeah. Now, there's a big difference between hair thinning and actually developing a circular bald spot where hair is no longer in existence. The women I've talked to in my life usually are not cool with that, or really any hair loss at all. But especially that.
Yeah. So, do you see like, when you see a patient, do you check for other autoimmune conditions besides just Hashimoto's, or?
Yeah, so it's something, the unfortunate truth is an autoimmune condition is not a one organ condition. Hashimoto's is not a thyroid problem. It is an entire body problem. So because of the nature of autoimmune diseases, it is not uncommon for a person that has one to develop a second and potentially a third. And it's because it's not the thyroid, or it's not the joint, or it's not the scalp. That's where the problem is. The problem is somewhere else in the body, and it's affecting the thyroid or the joint or the scalp in the case of alopecia. So yeah, we definitely see that. That's a trend we definitely see. And depending upon a patient's presentation when they come in and the symptoms, and their initial testing and stuff, we can then determine, all right, this person might need to be tested for additional autoimmune diseases. So, but I generally don't do that just to do it, because I don't want to waste people's money on testing that's not needed, but
Right.
if there's a need, then we do it for sure.
And with autoimmune conditions, you kind of never know. Like a lot of these symptoms, I mean, I've lived with these symptoms for like 30 years, and I didn't know they were even related to my autoimmune conditions.
Isn't that crazy? It's just it's so crazy the way the human body works. And it's such a valid point you made, because I think a lot of people are going through life right now and they have certain symptoms and they just can't, the doctors don't know. They go to the doctor and the doctor's like, yeah, I'm not really sure. I mean, maybe it's all in your head. Maybe you just need an antidepressant, right?
Right.
Which usually leaves the person more depressed. I had a patient once tell me she went to the doctor and, she told the doctor all of her symptoms, and depression was not one of them, by the way. And the doctor's like, look, I think you're just depressed. And she's like, no, I'm not depressed. He's like, yeah, I think you're just depressed. I'm going to write you a script for Zoloft. And she's like, well, I wasn't depressed before the appointment, doc, but you're getting me there. I'm feeling kind of depressed right now.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think, even with these conditions, like 90% of people may have autoimmune conditions in this world, and unfortunately they haven't been diagnosed. And
That's right.
if I didn't like faint in the gym one day, I probably would never know I had this.
Wow.
So
Wow.
yeah, and I think with the genes, and like now I kind of have a better idea of why all this stuff happened. But
Sure.
it started when I was like 3. I had epilepsy, and I had to like stay back in kindergarten because I had these seizures, and
Oh my God.
so it was just a trip. And I'm glad that like I'm not there anymore. But I grew up in a family of pharmacists, like Western doctors, where everything was just like take a pill,
Yeah.
and I knew there was something better than that, and more effective, because how did cavemen survive? How did
Right.
hunters and gatherers survive? Like these pharmaceutical drugs were not invented then, but they lived such long lives.
You're so right. Like Hippocrates wasn't like shelling out autoimmune medication. It's not like he was giving his people methotrexate in Greece, right? It's not what he was doing. Yet he was helping people and he was healing people. So what an amazing story you have. I would love to just talk with you one day and just hear more about your story, because the more I hear about it, the more I'm kind of just blown away. Like, for you to be so young, for real, for you to be so young, to go through all that and then to be where you are today and to be doing what you're doing it's pretty awesome.
It took me a while to connect the dots, though. It took me like 4 autoimmune conditions before
Sure.
I found my true purpose, which was doing
Right.
this. But sometimes in life it takes that, right?
That's right. That's right. I'm sure there's a lot of people that are very thankful that you got here,
Yeah,
and eventually, eventually you got here, no matter how long it took.
right. Yeah, and the other thing I wanted to cover on this interview was weight loss. Now, like I have over 1,000 women in this organization.
Yeah.
Every single one of them talks to me about 2 things: hair loss and weight loss.
Those are the two. Yep. Those
They're
are the two. I hear them all the time.
the biggest challenges, and
Yeah, for sure.
like for me, the weight loss kind of was related to inflammation, and I knew it was related to inflammation because there's no way I could gain weight with the way I was eating, and I was eating like 4 hours apart, so I don't have insulin issues, and
Right.
and it was just like, okay, there's no way, I don't care what kind of genetics I have, there's no way I can gain weight. But it was the inflammation in the body that can make us look like we're puffy, and it could actually hold on the weight.
Right.
So for me it was that, but for every person I think it's different, like
It is.
you can
It
go.
definitely is. When you're looking at weight loss, so right, when we just look at the natural physiology of the body, if you reduce calories, increase caloric expenditure through exercise, the body should theoretically lose weight. When the
Right.
body's not easily losing weight with diet and exercise, then there's something wrong with the body. You know, it's what most people don't realize is all diet and exercise do is they stimulate the hormone producing glands of our body to make fat burning hormone. And we have six, Sweeta, six hormones that will cause us to burn fat and three that will cause us to store fat.
Uh-huh.
So if a person is diet and exercising and they're trying to use diet and exercise to stimulate their thyroid gland to make fat burning thyroid hormone, but their thyroid's not working well and can't produce the hormone, then it doesn't matter how much they diet and exercise, right? They're never going to be able to lose the weight because they can't stimulate the gland because the gland is broken. So when we're looking at diet and exercise, when we're looking at weight loss and a person can't easily lose it, we know that there's something else going on in the body. Is it the adrenals? Is it the thyroid? Your liver, for example, your liver is the great hormone it's a great hormone balancer. It activates your thyroid hormone. It converts your growth hormone into IGF-1, which helps promote weight loss. Your liver helps turn off cortisol. Cortisol is a belly fat storing hormone. And when a person's cortisol is released from the adrenals, it's instantly active. It's not like the thyroid where T4 has to get converted. It's cortisol is instantly on. It's the liver that has to turn the cortisol off. So if there's problems with the liver, there could be problems with too much cortisol. There could be problems with too much estrogen, which can lead to weight gain around the hips, thighs, buttocks. There's so many different hormonal imbalances that could be present in the body or glandular weaknesses that can be present that can really be the source of why the person can't lose weight. And that's really what it boils down to in most cases.
Because there's weight loss and there's weight fluctuation,
Right.
like there would be times where I would probably have 10 pounds in weight fluctuation between the beginning of the day and the end of the day, which isn't healthy either, right?
No. And that when you're looking at something like that, right, that's like you said, that's that puffiness, that's that fluid. Your body's holding on to fluid for whatever reason. And there's a number of them, but for some reason it's holding on to that.
And I think someone in the organization asked, like, because the thyroid slows down your metabolism, should you eat less calories because your metabolism is slower and may not require as much food? Is that a way to maintain your weight?
So we have to really quantify what less calories mean. But often when I'm working with a patient that has, let's say, primary hypothyroidism, often that patient is initially on a lower caloric diet, not low, but 1,200 calories a day, maybe 14 tops. And they're on a lower caloric diet until the thyroid, the body starts to heal itself, the thyroid starts to work. Now, all of a sudden, their caloric requirements are changing and they could actually eat more and they can enjoy food more and all that other stuff. But initially, I do see that sometimes with certain thyroid cases where the calories do need to be reduced because things are just not burning as quickly. They're just not moving as fast.
And for me, what I noticed was that if I had eaten, I was eating like 1,200 calories a day.
Yeah.
Some people would think that's starving, but for me, I realized that even the food I was putting in my body was causing inflammation.
Right.
And I really needed to reset my body. And the one way I could do that was like not put anything in it so it can work on cleaning things up that are already in it. So that was sort of just my perspective. But I felt like, there were other things that were causing issues, and that was also increasing my reverse T3 at the time.
Oh, okay. That's not good. We don't want that.
Right.
Yeah. Don't want high reverse T3. Yeah, but you're spot on it. You're clearly very intuitive because you're right. When the body is going through healing, there can be certain foods or just food in and of itself can be too overwhelming for the system. So that's why cleanses or fasts and things like that have been used since biblical times and before as a healing tool, because when we remove food from the body, it does give the body time to heal and repair itself because it doesn't have to focus on the digestive actions that it would normally do, right? So it could focus more time on detoxification, healing, repairing. You wouldn't fast indefinitely, right? But you can do lower calorie for a period of time until the body comes around. So you're clearly very intuitive and you did the right thing for yourself, which was awesome.
Yeah, and I think, the reverse T3, maybe we can talk about that a little bit because a lot of these women do have high reverse T3 and, they call it the starvation sort of brake lights for your body, right?
Right, and it is. I mean, essentially, if we just boil down and said what reverse T3 is, it's having the wrong key in the right lock. It's like reverse T3 will start to clog up your T3 receptors on the cell. And when that reverse T3 is stuck, when that reverse T3 is stuck in that T3 receptor, now you got a problem because your naturally produced T3 can't get into your receptors. So how is your cell going to work? It can't. It's all clogged up with reverse T3. So yeah, so I think that's an important. It's a lab that not many doctors do. I've found for whatever reason, but I think it's an important one to look at because having the presence of reverse T3 or not can actually change how you're going to care for that person. So, yeah.
Interesting. So, like, because I've seen that a lot of the women I work with, they have normal TSH, they have normal T4, their T3 is like on the lower end,
Right.
and they have a higher reverse T3.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, and that's sort of, and the T3 controls most of everything, right? And
the T3 is really the most active form of thyroid hormone. Like the thyroid makes T0, T1, T2, T3, T4, but it predominantly makes T4. And T4 is not really very active. It's got to go, 80% of it goes and gets activated through the liver. About the other 20% goes and gets activated through the kidneys. And it's that conversion of T4 to T3, that activation that now allows the T3 to get to the cells. And now this T3 can help you lose weight and help you have energy and help you grow hair and help you have great skin and all that stuff that T3 does. But if it's being blocked essentially by too much reverse T3, it's, yeah, good luck. You're just not going to have the benefit of your naturally occurring T3. Yeah.
Wow. So how do you like work with that when you have patients that come in with normal thyroid numbers, but high reverse T3 and a low T3, free T3?
You got to find what's doing it, right? Because something is causing the T3 to be converted to reverse T3. So it's like something's causing it to turn around essentially. And you have to find out what that thing is. Sometimes it has to do with the adrenal problems. Sometimes it has to do with certain toxicities. It could be problems with the liver. There's a variety of different things that can be connected to that. Some support, like just general support, like if someone wants to just try it on themselves, ashwagandha is an herb that helps prevent the conversion of T3 to reverse T3. So that's good because we don't want that. So that's something that they could try on their own to do, is just add some ashwagandha. But you really need to identify the cause. Like, why is that happening? There's some reason for that little switch.
Yeah, and I think like, do you think it could also be genetics?
There are genetic factors. Yeah, there are genetic factors, and you got to look at epigenetics too. There's, like I said earlier, anything in the body can cause anything in the body, right? Like the guy with the jungle knot on his foot. It's really true. I mean, we could easily turn this, I think, into a weekend seminar, all about just reverse T3 and the things that can affect T3 to reverse T3 and vice versa. But there's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot of genetics play a role. Environment plays a role. Our epigenetics we have to look at. There's a lot that can be connected to that.
And I think I'll end off with this final question, because I know there's a lot of talk out there about keto and all these different diets. I mean, I personally follow an anti-inflammatory diet because that's worked for me. And I don't know for everyone else, but for me, it works. I love it, and I'm able to like have my system work and
Right.
functional. I mean,
Yeah.
and but like with keto, I know a lot of people use it, and is there a connection between T3 levels and doing a keto diet?
So here's what I could tell you about keto in general. Is it's good. It's good for a certain percentage of people, but it's not good for everybody, right? There's so many diets out there. There's some people where veganism works great. There's some people where keto is excellent. There's some people where they need to be paleo. There's some people that need anti-inflammatory. You and I are similar. I do well on an anti-inflammatory diet. So when we're looking at keto, keto can create a few different problems. There's a lot of benefit to certain people. I don't want to rag on the keto diet, right? But there's certain people, like if I did keto, you'd be picking me up off the floor. I'd be like dead. It would overload my liver. It would make me sick. It would just, oh God, it would be horrible. So for some people, I think when you're looking at the keto diet, one of the things that can occur is you start to overwhelm the liver. There's too many fats going into the body, right? When the majority of your caloric intake, the vast majority, close to 100%, is coming from fat and or protein, and only maybe 5% from carbohydrates, the body physiologically is not really meant to do that. And all of that fat and some of the protein can overload the liver. And when the liver gets overloaded, we start to get problems with just the conversion factor, converting T4 to T3. The other thing that we get is we get potentially a toxicity crisis that occurs in the body and or increased inflammation in some people that can lead to T3 converting to reverse T3 or staying as reverse T3 because the flip can't happen. The liver can't do its job. So I'm not against keto. There are some patients I definitely do keto with, but it's certainly not the most common eating program that we use in our clinic. That's for sure.
That's
Not to rag on any of you that are doing great on keto. If keto works for you, continue with keto. Keto doesn't work for me. It works for some of my patients great. You have to find what works for you because we're all bioidentically unique, you know?
right. Yeah. And I think, if women in this organization want to work with you, where do you start with them? Like what do they need to come prepared with?
So here's what I like to do first. So on my website, we have, if you go to my website, it's just alternacareinc.com. It's like ALTERNACAREINC.com. So alternacareinc.com. If you go to the website, one of the first things you'll see is free online health evaluation. I love for someone to start there. It takes about 2 minutes, to do, but I've taken, I don't know, the last 10 or 15 years, probably more than that, maybe whenever the internet started coming around, and we had websites, and we had a website like this. I've spent a lot of time creating this particular online evaluation to really pull key information from a person. And it also gives them a secure way to list off anything else they want to list from us. Often, depending upon their case, one of the things we're doing right now because of COVID-19 is we're trying to give back to the community. And one of our big give backs is we're giving people a free consultation. Their initial consultation is completely free with either our naturopathic doctor, one of our naturopaths, or our certified health coach. It'd be one of those guys. We'll actually talk to them for free. They'll review their evaluation. If they submit labs, we'll look at their labs. We'll talk to them about that. And then we'll give them some recommendations, right? And if they want to work with us directly, great. We'll cover the cost up front so they understand, what their cost would be if they want to do anything more with us. And if not, great. Then we got to have a great conversation and they got to meet us and we got to meet them, and hopefully they walked away with some value from that consultation. But that's one of the things that we're doing just for right now, or one of the things we're doing right now for just as a way to give back. We're just trying to help. So that's one of the things we're doing.
I love that. I mean,
Thanks.
I know like dealing with my situation, financially it was a burden, and being sick and having to work did not play out too well either. So I'm so glad you're doing that. Most doctors will not do that, and they will make you pay an upfront fee, and they'll make you probably wait 3 or 4 months, and we'll see you for like 10, 15
I
minutes
know.
and you're out the door.
Yeah, we're not doing that. You know, they'll often, more than likely, they're going to get a free consult with a naturopath. If not, it will be with a certified health coach. It won't always be with one of the naturopaths, but it'll be with one of the two. And our purpose in that consult, Sweeta, is just to like try to give them some help. You know, try to give them some advice. You know, what do we see from the evaluation that they filled out? What do we see from any type of forms that they submitted to us, like lab work and stuff? And what could they potentially do, right? And then we'll also give them our recommendations. And we right now we're doing that. We just do that for free right now, but that won't always be for free. But right now it's just our way of giving back. So thanks.
And one thing I love about your practice is that it's really focused on results. It's really focused on healing. I went to a practice that was in Las Vegas, and you know, when I had Hashimoto's, and they had told me, "Oh, we'll fix up all your symptoms. We'll fix up your Hashimoto's, but we can't guarantee weight loss or hair loss. Like that's two things that will not go away." And I said, well, if you're a healthy person, those two things should not be happening.
That's right.
You know, so if you cure everything besides hair loss and weight loss, that means you're not cured.
Right. You missed something, right? Healthy bodies are not overweight. Healthy bodies have healthy hair.
Right.
So I agree with you completely. Yeah.
So I love how you're focused on those results, and it's very hard to find that in a doctor. And maybe to end the interview, I'll just leave you with 3 takeaways. So maybe you can share 3 biggest takeaways with the group of women.
Sure. Yeah. I guess like, so three takeaways, excuse me, three takeaways would be: 1, understand whatever you're going through, there's a cause to it. So there's a reason for it. It doesn't just exist on its own, right? There's something that is creating it. Like when you step on a dog's tail, where does the bark come from, right? Its mouth. So if you want to help the dog, get off its tail. Don't give him drugs. Don't cut out his tongue. Just get off his tail. So it's the same thing. Understand, if you have a health condition, there's a reason you have it. There's a cause for that thing. And 2, that cause can be identified. There's testing that's available. There's ways to evaluate the human body to understand what that cause is. And then 3, there's things that you can do to yourself once you find the cause. And even if you don't find the cause, there's still things you could do to yourself to help your body heal, because that's the one amazing thing that your body is trying to do 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, is heal and repair. You know, I mean, Sweeta, we have in our body, we have about 20 to 30 trillion red blood cells. And every 90 days, our body destroys all 30 trillion red blood cells and regrows a whole brand new 30 trillion red blood cells.
Yeah.
Mind-boggling, you know? Your stomach lining regrows every 2 to 3 days. Your liver, you regrow a liver about every 3 years. You regrow a whole body every 7. So
wow.
Understand, if you have a health problem, there's a cause. There's a way to evaluate it and find the cause. And there's things that you can do to remove the block from healing, because ultimately your body wants to heal itself. It wants to heal its autoimmune disease. It wants to be at a healthy weight. It doesn't want to be. Survival actions require your body to not be that way. Your body doesn't want to be ill. It's trying to heal. You have to find and remove the block so it can do so. So those, I think, would be the 3 big takeaways I hope people could get from this interview today. And never give up for a 4th. Never, ever give up. You can't lose if you never quit. So
love that. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Robert. And I will be posting your information so they can get in touch with you. And I'm so grateful to have you today.
Thank you very much. And it's been my pleasure. You are just, honestly, just a shining light. Just looking at you here online, you're a beautiful being. And I'm just so happy and blessed to be part of this interview today. So thank you very much for having me on.
Thank you.
You're welcome.